I first started encountering this thing roughly 6 years ago when I moved out here. In that time, I have done a few things to try to figure out what it was or prove it is here. I have come to recognize that anything official is being suppressed. I have sent 2 snaggles of hair off for DNA processing via the local college, Southern Illinois University. One was lost, the other came back as a possum. However, I'm 100% sure that it was not the hair of a possum. I set up motion sensing video recording devices for a couple of years, but it has exceptionally long limbs and I only have a few strange swooshes captured. These days I have come to expect that I will find many small to medium deceased creatures on my property, and that it doesn't seem to bother with the cows, rather it seems to interact with them. We just call it the stilt walker and live well enough in harmony with it. But the only member of my family to have a close encounter with it is my great uncle. 2 years ago in the middle of the winter, he was pushing out a large round bale for some of the cows. In their rush, the cows pushed him to the ground, which broke his hip. He was completely stuck on the ground and miles out and too old to fuck with cell phones, so he wasn't discovered until late that night when I heard his calls off the back porch. He says that the stilt walker arrived about an hour after his fall when he was growing too weak to push the cattle away from his side of the bale. He said that it approached the bale and stood directly over him, taking huge chomps from the bale, but preventing the livestock from crushing him. So whatever it is omnivorous and seems to recognize and even act benevolently in the event that something on the farm is endangered, aside from the chickens. Part of the reason I've grown to respect it and stop trying to prove we have a cryptid the government needs to sample or anything. He said it smelled very yeasty, like it was fermenting sourdough in its long coarse hair. He's literally 98 though, so who knows. Another person shares, back in the 1990s, northern Arizona, my uncle told me a story about a skinwalker. He claims he saw. His story was pretty basic, usual stuff compared to today's stories. He was traveling on I-40 heading east, Flagstaff to Winslow at night. He stopped in Winslow to buy a beer, then heading south on I-87. This happened in the 1980s when drinking and driving was not a huge focus. He was pissed he had to travel to Sierra Vista for whatever army. He finished a beer, tossed it out the window. I guess littering was not a huge focus either. He sensed something outside his window but ignored it. For a few seconds finally he looked out the window and saw a stilt walker-like entity running along the side of the lonely road. He claims it wasn't really running, but more like floating or gliding along, keeping a pace for a few heartbeats before retreating into the darkness. His story is pretty vanilla compared to stilt walker stories in the age of the internet. The trope of it running alongside the vehicle is common today, but remember this was back in the early 1980s when stilt walkers were basically unheard of.